Yeah, so I can talk from personal experience. I worked at a fantastic organization, but I was several months um, out of work, and the organization went from a very large workforce to half in a very, very short period, and it's obviously a very challenging time. So I completely sympathise with anybody who has had difficulty in their career. But the interesting thing that came from that is I, in that process of trying to look for work, I got in contact with a recruiter who would call me every, I don't know, year or two about roles, and he had a role going. And I actually applied for the role, and I thought the interesting thing is he plays golf with a colleague. So I worked with a guy who plays golf with this guy, and I thought, okay, I'm in with the shoe-in because my friend at work knows him and plays golf like I think it was like a monthly basis. So they're good mates. And I applied for the role. I looked at the specifications of the role, and I thought, I'm in a shoe-in for this. And he straight away applied, straight away said, yep, Sash, you've got an interview. And the very next day at 9 o'clock, we had a call. And so I was really excited, thinking, this is going to happen. And within the first 1 minute, he said, Sash, you're not getting a role. I thought, what? And he said, let's have a look at your brand, your own personal brand. And let's have a look at your brand on LinkedIn. And he said, frankly, it's not good enough for this role. And I said, okay. And so since that day, I've worked very hard at building up my own personal brand on LinkedIn. And this conversation is part of that, because you could be the best professional in the world, but if nobody knows about it, then how are you going to differentiate yourself? And so in previous conversations, we were talking about differentiation. And so that's one thing that I've worked very, very hard on during the time of COVID, when I didn't have work, and now subsequently in my new role to promote my new business, the things that we do, but my own personal brand, because we all have a personal brand, and that sort of funnels through to your success. So you can be successful, but if you don't work on your personal brand, I know you work on your personal brand every day, right? The messages that you send out, the wisdom that you impart for free to all of your followers, and they're nuggets of gold on a daily basis.
I love that you had someone that was able to give you that shot of truth that you needed. I had the same experience about 10 years ago. I was out of work for some time. I got laid off, and I was looking for something, and I felt that my experience up to that point would lead me into something very quickly. I mean, I had been in a pretty good role, middle management, and had some great experience, great results. And I didn't have much of a network at the time. I did tap some of my network, but a lot of my network had been limited to some of the colleagues that I'd worked with. And a lot of them were in a similar boat to what I was in, and they were also looking. I went some of the old-fashioned ways. Now we call them old-fashioned, of going out and looking on job boards and applying to roles, not realizing the actual probability of getting some of those roles. I mean, if there's 100, 500, 1,000 people that are applying to that job, your odds are 1 in 1,000 unless you do something to dramatically improve your odds, and that's brand. So, I didn't realize those things years ago, and that's when I started researching and reading up on LinkedIn and some of these other social platforms, and how I could amplify my brand, how I could create content, how I could engage, because you've got to put the social into social if you're going to do that, and really how to leverage your resume, but also how to leverage your LinkedIn as your brand and your expression of brand. And, I applied to 1,643 jobs in that time. And I got some interviews. Some of them were, hey, you're overqualified. You're not going to get the role. Other situations were, ones where I went through an interview process and I could have done the work, but it was much less than what I wanted to make financially. So I was trying to be somewhat selective, but it was tricky because I was out of work for nearly a year. Now, I did use that time to finish a pet project, which was a book. And I've managed to transform that over the years because I now have 4 under my belt. But it was because of that book that I was actually noticed for a district manager role. And I was one out of about 400 people that had applied, but my resume was selected because I had written a book and I had a unique differentiator. I got the interview. And once you get in the room, it's easier to get the job, but you're right. You've got to have, what is that differentiator? What is the unique piece that's going to get you to the table? And then once you're there, you've got to win the interview. But every job that I've gotten since then, I can trace back to that moment and to that book and how it, number one, taught me how to create a brand, but number two, got me noticed. And from there, it's been my network that's kind of pulled me to different roles over the years. And brand creation and all of that has been so important because, as you said, it's really about that creation of content, meaningful engagement of people socially. And I've been fortunate to meet people all over the world, yourself included, because of that fateful time in my life.